Hello, everybody. As you've noticed, last night's recording did not record, and so I'm going to re-record this lecture portion of the lesson. It won't be the full 2 hours, so any principles or design application will be in this lecture. The recording that I did post was from a previous instructor who will cover all the content and educational side of things. So this will strictly be just the most important elements that we discussed, as well as the demos that I wanted you guys to see. So I'll go ahead and stop the video and we'll continue. All right, let's talk about the basic principles of design. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can go over that. Real quick, we're going to rush through this, but I want you to, this is what you're going to be graded on. So basic design principles. We're going to talk about format. What is it? Well, it's just defined perimeter. It's just the edges or boundaries of your design. In this case, it's going to be your artboard for your flyer that you're going to be designing, your grand opening flyer. Balance. I'm going to be looking for symmetry. Are things asymmetrical or are they symmetrical? And if you can do it right, they'll be balanced with both. So I need you to pay attention to the balance of the page. Make sure one side isn't too heavy. I don't want all the content centered on a page. I want there to be some left and right balance. If you have a long column of text on the left, then you might want a big graphic on the right. There just has to be something to balance it out. Think of a scale. Visual hierarchy. When touch screens with multi-touch capabilities or any interface technology are used, then visual hierarchy becomes really dynamic and it changes. When designing for these devices like iPhones, smartphones, you'll need to consider distance, near and far, and the position and the size of what's seen in relation to who's viewing it. Now, a touch screen responds to touch a little differently, but on a graphic element, we want to pull it forward and we want it closer. We want everything to appear nearer, okay? There's going to be a few things that we're going to be talking about. One thing is visual hierarchy, order and arrangement of all graphics. There are rules. We're going to be talking about proximity. It occurs when elements are placed together or when they're grouped together. Depending on how far apart they are or how close together they are, this will determine whether or not they are seen as a group or as an individual entity. So proximity, elements that are near each other, those spatial relations are perceived as belonging together. There's also something called continuation. Continuation or continuing lines. Lines are always perceived as following the simplest path. So if two lines break, the viewer sees the overall movement rather than the break. And so this is also called, this is an implied line. There's closure. Closure. The mind tends to connect individual elements on its own. So this produces a completed form, even though the lines don't necessarily complete the picture. So in the panda picture, the lines don't necessarily complete the entire panda, but our mind does. So this kind of is helpful when we're creating a completed form, a unit, or a pattern in order to produce the closure that we're looking for. Basic design principles, we'll skip over this since that wasn't necessarily the most important part. Parts of an ad. Now, even though we're going to be designing a flyer this week, I want you to be able to understand the parts of an ad, because the parts of an ad go on the parts of flyers or parts of business cards, whatever it is. So first things first, the artwork, okay? We want to talk about the art. Artwork is usually the most important part, whether it's a vector image or a photograph. If it's just some kind of art or symbol that is on your ad or flyer. The title, main headline is next, body copy is next, and then the contact information. This is an order of importance. So as you go down the list of importance, they start getting smaller and smaller on the page. We call this visual hierarchy, hierarchy of design elements. You think of a pyramid or a triangle, and at the top is the image. That's the most important, biggest part of your ad. So you want something to catch someone's attention. You want a visual that will catch someone's attention, whether it's a vector or a photograph. The image should be the largest part on your page. Then the second largest is the headline. You want something catchy. You want something that will catch their attention to get them to read more. And then the body copy. By now, you're really small on the page. You don't need a whole lot of, you don't need a large size of body copy. In fact, less is more in this case. the smaller or the further down this pyramid you go, the smaller the information should be. So by the time you get to contact information, which is almost the second to the last, it should be pretty small. If people want to know more about your product or about the grand opening, they want to know more about the event that's being promoted, they can search for the contact information. It doesn't need to be very prominent. Same with the body copy. It's just to give a little bit more information about what it is, but between your image and your headline, those two big, large elements should be enough to carry the weight of the ad. Now, we named the hierarchy of elements. So in this case, if I were to ask you which is the largest element on the page, you would say the picture. That's the first one that your eye gravitates to. The second would be the headline. Third, body copy. And look at the size. It significantly diminishes in size as you go down the list. So the first one was the image, which was the largest. Second was the headline. Second largest. Body copy was significantly smaller, and contact information was even smaller than that. So you can see here that the image is the biggest, then the headline second, body copy is smallest. By the time you get to the logo, it's very small. It's almost an afterthought. So when you're designing your grand opening, I don't want your logo to be the star of the show, okay? I don't want it to be the biggest portion on your flyer. It doesn't usually tend to be. So we want this to be nice and small. I want you to think creatively and think of how you can create some art or some interest on for your visual without using vectors or photographs, okay? You're not allowed to use pictures or graphics. There's another example. The largest element on here is the picture, okay? And then the second is the headline. Pretty catchy, ladies first, men second. What's this talking about? If I want to know more, I'll read the body copy, which is much smaller here at the bottom. Again, the logo is the fourth, and it is much, much smaller. So in fact, it's the smallest element on the page. So I want you to pay attention to the hierarchy of elements. So as I give you feedback on your design, I expect to see this in order. The image should be the largest, headline should be second largest, body copy much smaller, and the logo the smallest of all the elements on the page. Now I asked the class what element was missing on this page, and they were able to name 4 out of the 5. We've got our image, we've got our headline, our body copy. We even have some contact information here at the bottom, which is the website, but we're missing the logo. So it doesn't tell us what company, is this a service, a product, what is this? And so that leaves some questions. So don't leave your logo off. That's very important. All right, and then next we went right into the demo. This was a previous slide for a previous class, but that's similar information that's very important. So now we've discussed the science behind the ad design. Now it's important to talk about, let's take a moment to dissect the flyer that we're going to be sharing. So I've set up my Illustrator screen here for you, and we're going to be going over how to set up our document. So File, New. You're going to enter in the name. This is your grand opening flyer. I put 4 artboards here because I'm going to do 4 different demos. Well, I did 4 different demos. I'll be showing you 4 different examples. But the width and height should be same. You can just change this to 1 when you're setting up your document because you don't need multiple. And then 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. You can choose to do portrait or landscape. I'm going to do portrait since that seems to be the traditional route sometimes with flyers. And then I showed the class some examples that I want to share with you today. Let me pull some up. First example is this poetry festival. This was a really cool layout. A lot of the class members liked the vintage look. And in fact, the letters, the typography becomes the art on the page. Now, some students ask me, well, how do you get that effect? I'm going to show you. It's actually pretty cool and also very simple. So we're going to open your window drop-down menu. You're going to go down to your Pathfinder. Everything is alphabetical, so look for P. This is your little Pathfinder tool. I'm going to be working under the Pathfinder section. In fact, the first tool is called Divide, and so I'll be using the Divide button to create this effect. First things first, I'm going to grab my Type tool, click and drag to draw my text box. In this case, it'll be grand opening. And then I'm going to change this to it was Minion Pro is what I was looking for. I was looking for a serif font because that will give me a really cool effect. I'm going to increase my type, my font size. I'm going to bring these in. I kind of want these to overlap a little bit on top of each other. And in fact, I even want them to, I'm adjusting the kerning a little bit, or I'm sorry, the leading and the kerning. And then I'm going to go to create outlines, go to type, create outlines. What this does is it now individually selects, now I can individually select and edit each letter. Once I've done that though, I can no longer edit the spelling or the word. I can just edit the letters now. So I'm gonna right click, ungroup, and now this will allow me to move my letters. So what I'm gonna do is kind of highlight everything. I'm gonna bring it in, so there's some overlapping, not a whole lot, but just enough to give it that effect. You can kind of play with the spatial relationship a little bit between these letters. Just like that. And you want a slight overlap on the letters because that will give you this effect that you're seeing here. Not a whole lot of overlap because we want to still be able to read it. We want it to be legible. But again, I'm just kind of messing with how everything is going to look. All right. Now I'm going to even make it bigger. By holding down Shift and Option, this allows me to constrain the proportions as I make it bigger. I'll zoom in for you and we'll start the process. All right, so now I'm going to highlight all the letters. And I can see some of the anchor points have overlapped on other letters. That's exactly what we want. We're going to go to Pathfinder, Divide, right here at the bottom. Now it's divided anything that's overlapping. So anything overlapping is now its own little section. I'm going to right click, ungroup. And this is where I'm going to go in and I'm going to start changing the colors. I liked this color scheme. So I'm going to go in and give it some color. There we go. And with this one, there we go. And now I'm not, any part that overlaps on the letter will be a different color. That will give me the effect that I'm going for. Okay, next one is blue. Perfect. And in fact, any overlapping vector, I'm going to change the color. To give it that look. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Okay. And you even got to get those little pieces too. Okay. To go through this really quick. And with this one, You kind of get the idea, right? So I'm not going to totally finish it, but with the letters all set up, go. Kind of fill in any other gaps. It's quick and dirty. Okay, so it kind of gives me the effect I'm going for. So now I want to set up my background. So I'm going to grab a background color. Now we talked about light colors. If you're going to have a light background, you need to have enough dark colors to offset when you're using text. Same, you don't want light background and light color text. That will be hard to read. So I'm going to send this to back and then get another rectangle. And I'm just using my eyedropper tool to copy the color from the flyer. Now, we talked about not necessarily copying designs verbatim, but you can copy concepts, absolutely, and color schemes. So now that I've got my layout set up, I might even work on stretching these letters just a tad. Okay, and I'm going to highlight everything except my background, and I'm going to rotate it like this. I'm going to move it in, and I can resize it holding Shift and Option as I click and drag the anchor point. This will allow me to resize it proportionately. So I've got my grand opening here. This blue box I want to extend all the way to the edge, and this orange box I want to extend all the way to the edge. Now when I do that, it overlaps other pages and it looks uneven. So I want to, when I'm all done with my design, I'm going to take a rectangle, give it a transparent fill. I don't want any color on it, but I want it at the top of my layer. And I'm going to highlight everything, right click, make clipping mask. What that does is it now constrains everything within that frame. Now that box still, if I hover over it, you can still see it's there, but it's within my clipping mask. So it's kind of masked what's overlapping. So everything stays in its page, which is kind of cool. So now you can format your text any way you want to kind of get everything formatted, but that's a cool way to set up your flyer. And you created visual intrigue without using any graphics at all. So it's kind of cool how you've done that. Now let's move on to the next one. This one I did last night. This was a neat little concept. A lot of students liked the color scheme again. Here's another way you can tackle it. If you want to copy an overall concept, we'll close the Pathfinder box. We'll go to Window, open up our Layers link, and then we're going to add new layers. This one will be my example layer, and the second layer will be my text layer. My example layer, I want to click on it, change the opacity so it's pretty transparent, and then I'm going to lock it. So what that does is now I can't move it. That will allow me to move things around on my layers without just allowing me to see kind of the overall layout of what I want to copy. So then I go to my text layer. I'll grab my type tool. This is where I'll set up my type. And to create those little people, I will grab my type tool again, and I'll draw the letter I, lowercase I, and I'll highlight it. Whoops. And I'm going to go to find, I'm going to highlight it, and I will actually want to try to find a font that will give me a nice round I. And you could normally just draw that if you want. Let's see if we can get it to, there we go, to change as I move. Perhaps it won't. Try Century Gothic. There we go. I just wanted a nice round I. So now I'm going to go to Type, Create Outlines, because I want to make sure that my, whoops, I want to make sure that I can edit my letter. Holding down Shift and Option, I can enlarge it, ungroup, and now this will allow me, release compound path. Now this will allow me to adjust and shorten my box if I need it to be adjusted. And once I have my little person, bring it in a little bit more. Okay. Kind of want to make sure it's centered. Make sure your smart guides are turned on so that you can adjust everything. I'm going to just kind of enlarge it and place it over these little people. It doesn't have to be perfectly sized. For this one, I definitely want to make sure I bring it down. I want a little person here. Holding down Alt Option will change your arrow to black and white. You see that black and white double arrow? Holding down Alt Option, click and drag will allow you to copy. Hold down Alt Option. This is going to allow me to copy. Now, once I have my family, I'm going to kind of highlight them, hold down Alt Option. This will allow me to copy more than one at the same time. Kind of center everything where they need to be. We need one more little person. Alt Option, click and drag. All right, I've got my family all set up. Now I just need to format my text. So I'm going to go to the website. One second, let me pull up the text. And we'll go to assignment, and they give you the copy that you're supposed to use. Now, personally, I would say just kind of edit what you want, but we kind of don't have that luxury this time around. So your challenge is to have to take a large body of text and make it look interesting, okay? Try to play around with the layout. Don't just center everything if you can help it. We talked a lot about that. You should be using your logo from last week. Oops. So I've got my type now. I'm going to highlight everything. That font is way too big. I want a sans serif, so I'll use Helvetica. We talked a lot about Helvetica in class, being a very commonly used font because it's so versatile. And so I'm going to use Helvetica in the spirit of things. I'm going to go to Type, Change Case, Uppercase. That will give me the uppercase look that I'm going for. And then I'm going to highlight the big words that I want to, highlight the big words that I want to feature, like grand opening. That's kind of a big word that we want to highlight. So I'll make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to change the weight to bold. We talked about adding contrast. And if you need to make the box a little wider, that's fine too. You just have to adjust for what you have, your content. I'm going to hit a return. Now, when you make something larger or adjust the weight of it, you have this uneven spacing, this uneven auto spacing. So you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to adjust it, adjust the leading and kerning individually. And we're going to increase this to about 16. And I just want to change the leading on this one. Each individual line you can change. Now, here you're going to have to edit. You're invited to the grand opening of our store branch location. Which one do you want? I'm going to choose store. So you will have to do some editing there. And then I'm going to highlight this and go to Window, Type, Paragraph. That pulls up my paragraph dialog box. I'm going to uncheck hyphenate because that creates widows and orphans, and I don't want widows and orphans in my text. The rest of the text I'm going to make it this font. Oops. Our new store. I'm going to make a light. Same with this. I'm going to do this one light. And then Christina Aguilera is kind of a big name, so I want to highlight that as much as possible. And I can make this even wider if I need to. I'm going to adjust the tracking and kerning a little bit, put a return at the bottom. Okay. This one I'll probably do Helvetica new, and I want this to be light. Actually, I want it to be regular. Just play around with it and see what works best for you. All right, and then once I have that, I'm going to take this text out. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to put it in a new text box because I want to format it a little differently, like we see in the red here. So I want some brackets to separate things. So I'm going to highlight Friday, September 16th. This is going to be my, and I don't want it at 40. I think I want to bring it down. 5:30 p.m. and I'm going to put a return and do the same thing for the next one. I'm going to kind of adjust the leading here. I'm going to take the TH and I'm going to go to character. And I'm going to do superscript, and that will bring it up a little bit. And then here is where I'll copy the next portion of that text. Okay, same thing. Same format. I'm going to do the same thing as I did below. I'm going to take the RD on the 23rd and give it superscript. I'm going to get my eyedropper tool and copy what I just designed. Okay. Oops, superscript. There we go. And then at the bottom, this part, I'm going to hit enter. This part isn't as important, so I'm going to make it much smaller. In fact, the must be 21 or older can even be much smaller. This I'm going to make bold. And maybe must be 21 or older will be another important thing. But again, as the further down we're going with the type, we want it to be much, much smaller. If you hold down Alt Option, or I'm sorry, let's see if we can get this lined up here. And I'm going to bring this in because it's going to line up differently. I'm going to have brackets around it. So I'm going to grab a line tool. I'm going to line up the bracket right here. Grab the stroke. I think it's about 5-point stroke. And I want it to be red. So I'm just going to pick a red, hold down Alt Option, click and drag. That will allow me to duplicate it. This I want all red, but we'll fix the coloring in just a minute. So now I'm going to fit this information between the brackets. And if it's not small enough, I can bring down the font size. This can stand to be a little bit bigger. We'll go to 16. I'm just going to go as big as it'll let me between that bracket. Go. And then I want this 16 as well. Maybe 15, bring it down. Okay, and the same thing with this. 16. I'm just formatting it so that it's interesting. It doesn't all run together. I'm highlighting important information by making things bold and skinny, narrow, and wide. Move this box up. All right. Last part, I want to format this text. Put a return on it, and this information can be much smaller too. Perhaps it could even be that small. And I want it regular. Bring this up a little bit. We do have more content than what's already here, so we're gonna have to kind of fit it in as best we can. All right, that looks good to me. Now it's time to change the coloring, okay? So what we're gonna do is go back to our example page, unlock it, click on the picture, bring it back to 100% opacity. I'm gonna bring it over now because we no longer need it. I have everything placed where I want it to. All we need right from it is the color scheme. Okay, so I'm going to highlight grand opening. I'm gonna click on the color that I want. And do the red. And then Friday, September, I want all this red. This is the information. It is important because it's when the events are. And these brackets need to be that same red. Problem is, I need them to extend a little further down. They need to extend down to the end of the time because it's kind of breaking information off. And then this, I want this dark gray. I like this charcoal gray that they're using. Now this works really well with a white background because you can go with a slightly lighter color for your font. Right here. Okay, and then this is all going to be this dark gray. So the important things are what I've created emphasis using bold and light font. I've also created contrast using color. Let me go back on light on that one. Okay. And I've also created interest by sectioning off things, grouping things. So this looks about right for me. I'm going to do that. Now I've got to go and color each of these people. So I'm going to do every three. There's 3 colors. And that'll be the dark gray. Oops, wrong color. Dark gray. And then I'll go in and do the light gray. Then I'll go in and do the red. And then you have it. And then you'll put your logo here somewhere. It doesn't have to be big. In fact, you could even do a cool grand opening here. We'll go bold. We'll do it nice and big. Oops. Maybe it will be that big. We'll shrink it down a little bit. You might have to come up with a different event, or you can do "you are cordially invited." Come up with some wording and see what you can do. Let's celebrate. There you go. Let's celebrate, or let's party. You can make that nice and big. Again, just change the color. And then you can put your logo there at the bottom. So I'll type create outlines. I'll make this as big as I can. I'm going to line it up right there. And then you could, or that doesn't really line up. Let's try it again. That's hard to read, so we probably won't do that. Kind of bring it over to the far right so it doesn't interfere with the message on the left. And then you can put your logo here at the top, your jumping spider or your bank. But just make sure that your graphic matches the company that you're designing for. So this probably wouldn't be, this could be jumping spider. That's fine. This one could be a jumping spider. It's colorful. It's got the toy, the brand. This could also be for bank too. The colors are very corporate. So you kind of get the idea. There's a few other designs I wanted to show you. We won't get to all of them today. I only did 2 demos yesterday. Here's some others. Here's one that I really liked. You can just Google flyers, graphic design flyers, and kind of come up with some ideas. This is another example of how they've taken a basic type text-heavy flyer and just stylized it in a way that is really appealing and really nice. So that's one idea. The other idea is if you just wanted to go straight text, here's a black and white version. This could be a good corporate version. We did talk about colors that we're using in our designs. I recommend that you only stick to 2 or 3 colors max, okay? Don't go doing any more than that. Stay away from gradients. Don't use gradients in your design. It just becomes a crutch and it becomes too busy. So stick to 2 or 3 colors. In this case, black, white, and gray are 3 colors. So it's kind of added a nice little ability to create some emphasis. Same with this one. I've used 2 shades of gray and red, and there's some white in the background. So this is a nice color scheme here. Again, we're using 3 colors, orange, yellow, blue. Those are 3 colors. So I would stick to 3 colors when you're designing. This is another option to design. I also saw another one that I really liked. This one's really cool because you're not using any graphics yet. It looks like you did. And that's the cool little design in the background, those slanted lines. That's a really nice touch. They divided things with a line here. If you want more information, you do have to use the copy, but you're allowed to break it up in the way that you want to make it flow and make it look nice. It doesn't have to be in a paragraph block. So have some fun with this assignment. Again, I apologize that not all of the lecture had recorded, but hopefully this gives you some help on the assignment. Good luck, guys, and we'll see you on Thursday. Come to the multi-session. I'll be there to help you with your logo changes. You will need to do the feedback that I gave you. If some of your logos say go back to the drawing board, or maybe think of new ways to come up with things to explain if this is a company that's a bank or a toy store or an Italian restaurant, then you're probably going to need to go back and Google. Now, I showed one student some Google icons, restaurant icons or bank icons, and use that as inspiration, okay? Thank you for joining me, and if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email.